They say the Highway 11 motel shut down for good after the storm of '98. The roof caved in, and there were no survivors inside. At least, that's the official story. But if you happen to drive past it on a dark, rainy night, you might just see the old signs still flickering. And if you look closely, you'll see one window glowing a soft, sickly yellow through the downpour. That's room 213, the one that remembers. The motel itself stood about 30 miles north of Waverly Creek, swallowed by a sea of pine trees and perpetual fog. It was the kind of place truckers would use for a single night and forget by morning. But in the summer of 2024, a photographer named Claire Matthews made it her destination. Her project was documenting what she called Lost America, the abandoned places and the forgotten stories they held within their decaying walls. When she finally stepped inside room 213, she noticed the strangest thing. The air, instead of smelling like dust and rot, smelled of fresh detergent. The bed was perfectly made. The old radio on the nightstand was humming with faint, crackling static. And resting on the pillow was a single dark hair. Claire began to take photos, capturing the eerie stillness of the room. It was only when she reviewed the images on her camera that a cold dread began to creep up her spine. In every single photo, the bed sheets were different. In one, they were wrinkled. In another, perfectly smooth. In a third, the corner was slightly pulled back, as if someone had just climbed in. She let out a nervous laugh, trying to convince herself she'd accidentally shifted the linens while moving around. But then she saw the timestamps. The photos had been taken just 30 seconds apart. She hadn't moved an inch. At exactly 10:41 p.m., she heard them. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, dragging along the hallway right outside her door. She held her breath, listening until they stopped. When she finally worked up the nerve to wrench the door open, she found the hallway empty. But there, on the warm carpet just inside her room, were wet footprints leading from the door toward the bathroom. She froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. The bathroom light flickered on by itself. Steam began to roll out from under the door, and when she peered inside, she saw the mirror was completely fogged over. Scrawled across the glass in dripping letters were two words: "Welcome back." Claire stumbled backward, desperate to escape, but something stopped her. A photo, dislodged from the wall, fell to the floor. It was an old black and white portrait of a couple, smiling as they stood outside this very motel decades earlier. Behind them, she could see the same window, the same faded curtain, the same faint yellow lamp, and the man in the photo. He was wearing her jacket. The next morning, she fled to the Waverly Town archives. The records showed the motel had burned down twice, once in 1971 and again in 1998. Both times, the fire had started in room 213. An old newspaper article described it as the room that never cools. Firemen had claimed it was the only room they couldn't enter. Their hoses would turn to steam on contact with the doorframe. She showed her disturbing photos from the night before to the town librarian. He didn't even bother to look up from his desk. He just sighed and said, "Everyone who goes there brings back something they thought they left behind." Shaken, Claire returned to her car. She opened the glove box to find her keys, and her hand brushed against something cold and metallic. It was a motel key. Stamped onto the brass tag was the number, 213. When she looked back through the windshield toward the motel, the building was gone. There was nothing but pine trees, thick fog, and a faint, rhythmic humming sound like the static from an old radio, tuned to a station that no longer exists. Later that night, she uploaded her photos to her laptop. In every single image, a different person was asleep in the bed. They were from different decades, different walks of life, but they were all facing the same direction, toward the door. Some rooms don't just wait for new guests. They simply remember the ones who stayed. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy stories that blur the line between memory and reality, be sure to follow for more.